Good morning. Good morning.
Morning.
Is this thing working? Can you hear me in the back? Can people in the back hear me? Do I need to do this? Hello, hello. How about now? Bueller. Did you have a good weekend? Till Monday came. So yes. Yes, you had a good weekend. Speakers in this room are so weird. Who found Friday's code sprint to be a challenge? Me too. So what we're going to do today is a little bit different than something we've done in here before. Pretty excited about it. We're going to work that problem in front of you. And first I'm going to do it in Python and show you the problem-solving process that I go through when I'm faced with something that I don't know how to do. And then we're going to do it again in Java and again in Swift right before your very eyes. The goal of which is to help you see the nuances of the different languages, but more importantly, see how to solve a problem using a tool you've never used before. The first time that I ever saw a dictionary in Python was last Wednesday morning before I gave you a lecture on it. And the takeaway that I want you to get from today's experience isn't adding dictionaries to your quiver of neat things that you now understand, but rather the thought process that I went through to be able to go from a place of not knowing to a place of knowing how to use this thing and make it do what I want. And so that's what we're going to talk about today. Friendly reminder, first off, here's where we are. Should be done with all of this stuff. We're working on phase 3 starting today. That eligibility was evaluated on Friday. We'll send out an email on that. I know that there were some questions about phase 1 and 2. We're working on getting back to you to answer those. Please continue to direct your questions about eligibility to codinghelp@temple.edu, and we'll get you set up. This week we're working on phase 3, and along the way I'm going to show you this stuff today. Wednesday we're going to do a neat trick called regular expressions, so that'll be what Friday's code sprint's about. We'll get you set up there. And once again, the goal here isn't to add another tool to your quiver as much as it is to show you how to implement something you haven't used before. However, let me give you a friendly reminder. We're coming up on the cutoff for phase 4 eligibility. There are only 4 phases. And so, if you're stuck, these things need to become priority number 1 in your life. We are here to support you in office hours, email, and social media. It's still not too late. However, if these things aren't done by Friday, you can do a little syllabus math and realize that the highest grade you can get in the class is a C. So, happy Monday, everybody. Let's not let that happen. Just to remind you, phase 2, what we're really working on is getting the main feature of your code written. You may remember that when we started the class, one of the things I showed you was this picture of a black box. And on one side there were inputs, and on the other side there were outputs. In my mind, you're working on the black box right now. Phase 3 is where you're going to add the extra features in the GUI that lets you handle capturing inputs and capturing outputs. For now, you're kind of spoofing that data just so you can get your black box written. And then lastly, you'll go through a round of edits and write yourself a video demo, hand it off to some customers to see what they think of your app, and all of that. So once again, we're going to submit this week's phase via PDF. One person submits. It's due at 11:59 on Monday. We've got one due tonight, another one due next week, and so on. And I'll post all of this for you so that you can see what's expected. But next week I want another little paragraph introduction of how the app, what it does, and then give me the code and the working GUI, bells and whistles, screenshots all of this into a PDF report, just like the other phases. Any questions there? All right. So, just a reminder, the trick we were playing with last week was a dictionary, also known as a hash map in Java. And the neat thing about it is that we can store our data using keys instead of indexing positions in a list. So just to remind you, in a list we use things like a hard bracket and a 1. And if this is, say, Python, we start counting at 0. So this is actually going to return whatever the second element is that's sitting in this variable called myList. And that's great as long as there's some reason or order to the way things are stored. There's lots of data that doesn't make sense to store that way. For example, maybe it's user data for the app you're writing. Maybe there's a login and they've got things like passwords and favorite fish and all these different attributes about themselves, and you want to be able to look it up. You don't want to look up the third person. You want to look up Farrar. For things like that, dictionaries and hash maps are really great because you can literally use strings in place of these indices, and in any order, it can go look something up by that idea. And so that's what we were working on last week. So what I've done is actually brought HackerRank up here, and I'm going to try this test right before your eyes. I hope we can get the font big enough that everybody can see. If not, we might have to get a little bit more friendly today. So start this challenge. We're going to do this databases question. So this is copy-paste what you guys saw on Friday, so I'm not going to read the whole description again. But what I'd like to know is if I make these pluses enough times, like, can this be read in the back row? Right, Chos? Okay, so what we told you we wanted was a code that has 3 options. Right? We're going to add a user, delete a user, or display users. And we're going to feed you some dictionaries. It says that we're going to feed you, let's see, where's our sample input? A dictionary named user info, another dictionary called new user, and a string called option. So here's a sample input of that. Things get weird on the word wrapping, but this is one entry of our input dictionary. Here's our string for the option that we've selected. And here's the string for the second dictionary input that we're using that's either going to be used when we're adding or deleting a user. And it shows us some output. And one of the things that you'll notice is that it actually sorted it by ID number. So there's a lot going on here. So let's scroll down. I'm going to do this in Python. We'll show you the other codes in a minute. Man, this does not project well at all. Let's see. If I make it that big, can you still read it in the back? We good? All right. So I scroll into this thing and I see 1, 2, 3 function definitions, plus this main function starting here that has 3 inputs. Truth be told, life is never very clear, and I'm not sure what all of this even means. As I read this problem statement the first time, I find myself lost, not completely clear on why it is that this is being thrown at me or what it's going to look like. And so the first thing that I want to do is just look at it. So if I'm going to come into main, and before I do anything else, I'm going to print user info, then I'm going to print new user, and then I'm going to print option, because I just want to see what the heck is going on here. And I'm going to run my code. And it's exploded on me. And I come down here and it says, sorry, that's very polite that you don't know how to do your job. I expected an indented block. Who's seen this error? Score. Who wants to tell me what causes that error? Yeah. I'm sorry? There's nothing under my functions. So Python's one of these weird languages where it just uses indented text to group things together like in functions. And so when I create this line, it's expecting to find something tabbed in there that gives instructions on what the heck this add user function does. So my really quick hack to let me continue on with my experiment here is just to teach this function to do nothing useful. And so if I just have this function return 0, then what would happen is, if I called this function, it would spit out a 0. And it would take that 0 and stick it back in the main. For example, if I were to do result equals display users of user info, just to copy the thing up there, and then I print the result, what do you think it's going to print, presuming my code compiles this time? Who says it's going to print my database full of people? Who says it's going to print something other than that? Who says we're lost? Okay. So this display users command might as well be named yum yum users. It's not built in. The word display there is just for my convenience. Let's change this real quick to yum yum users and call that function instead. What happens when I call the function yum yum users? Well, it goes up here and it follows the instructions. What do the instructions say to do? Return a 0. And so it's going to take a 0 and spit it back into this value called result and print result. So it's going to print a 0. Run my code now. Hopefully I won't get a compile error. Yep, it just tells me my cases didn't pass. Wrong answer. Well, that's fine. The point is, by adding these return zeros, there's now some sort of definition to my functions, and so the code's happy to go with it. Okay, so here's my output. Let's work our way from the bottom up. There's that 0 that came from returning 0 and then printing that result. Okay. The next line that I typed said print option. So I see a thing down here that says option add user. Oh, that's not it. Where is it? Option, add user. I printed that. And before that, I printed the two other inputs, right, which were user info and new user. And now I can see the way they're structured. These curly braces are kind of weird. And if I scroll to here, this is basically one entry of this dictionary. And that's what I'm interested in. See, what I've got here is actually a dictionary that only has two fields in it. It's got a key that's the ID number, and then it's got this list sitting in it. Oh, I selected 2 there, didn't I? And then it's got this list of attributes that goes with this key. And so presumably, somehow I could use that key to access that list. And so here I am lost and confused and no idea what I'm looking at. And I go to Google and I want to type Python, because that's the language I'm writing in. And then I want to type the word dictionary methods. Oh, cool. Look, lots of commands. Let's pull this up. Here is a comprehensive list of all the things that a dictionary can do. All right, we're going to find that handy. And so presumably, we could start looking at these in more detail. For example, we know this thing is just silly, so I'm just going to delete that now. And what I want to figure, option was just a string, so I'm good at handling strings, so I'm going to delete that. These are both examples of dictionary items. Let's just work with the bigger one. So I come over here, and I've got all these different items. First thing I want to do is I just want to see what the heck the keys are. And so I go to print userinfo.keys, because that's how That's how we call these. Let's see what it spits out now. Hey, look at that. It printed out this weird thing that says dict keys, and then it gave me all of them. So those keys are all the things. You know what? Let's keep 2 prints in place here. Print user info. Run this code again. Okay, so now it printed the whole thing out, but then it says the keys for this dictionary are these items in this list. So that's neat because now I know if I want to grab just one of them, I could do something like this. Keys equals user info dot keys. And now what I've done is I've created a variable named keys, and I've stuck that list in it. And I could do something strange, like maybe look at just the first key. And so here's all my stuff. Let's see, this is the first print. Hey, that didn't work. Dict keys does not support indexing. Okay, so that's an object. It's not a list yet. I got to go back to my methods and learn how the heck I'm going to get that out of there. How does a keys item work? Well, let's open up the instructions on this thing and see. Keys doesn't take any parameters. Here's some instructions. Let's see. Print empty dict.keys, and out comes these things. Interesting. Oh, I can assign them. There's interesting stuff. And so I start reading all of these things and wonder what else I could do with them. Well, we know we can't access them like that because it's this weird object. So let's try this. Python keys method. And it returns these things. So we can print them, that's nice. I wonder what else we can do to them. I remember somewhere in the problem statement it said we wanted to sort these things, right? Where was that? Correct formatting, get the user's thing working first. Here we go. When displaying the database, reorder the user's ID in ascending order. Okay. I'm having some trouble accessing these things. Let's figure out how we could sort dictionary keys in Python. Ooh, sorted. I never saw that before. Let's go back over here and see what sorted does to this thing. Where's my code window? Here we go. Print sorted keys. Oh, that's interesting. Do you notice what happened between those two steps? Let me show you one more time. First, I'm going to print the keys. Then I'm going to print the result of this function called sorted acting on them. Where's my code? Where's my output? Oh, I'm scrolling too far here, gang. I'm sorry. There we go. All right, so here's printing the original dictionary. Here's printing the output of dict keys, which gives me this weird object. But do you see how on this line now we just have a list? I've changed data types here. I wonder if I can access just one of them. Keys sorted equals sorted of keys. Stick that in a variable, keys sorted of, say, item 0, and run that. You're literally watching how I solved this, by the way. See, what I'm doing is I'm picking at it. I'm using just the print command so that I can see what the heck the result of my code's changing was. And where did this go? Did I run it? Run. All right, here's my output. Oh, look at that. I got one item. Okay, now we might be cooking with gas. Let's try something here. Keys sorted of 0. I wonder if I can go back to the original thing, user info, and access the key. So I stuck this single item in a variable, and I'm going to use that now to access by key. And my output is, oh boy, look at that. It's the whole list. And so what you're seeing here is I started with this weird thing that I don't quite understand. I figured out how to get the different keys that are living in it. I figured out from there how to turn those keys into something that I can talk to. And then from there I figured out how to use those keys to access data out of my original dictionary. The beauty, though, is that this keys sorted has them in order now, right? So now that I figured out how to do it for one, let's do it for all of them. I'm looping through all the different sorted keys, sticking them in here one at a time, and running the print. Oh, look at that. We got something that might work. So there's one, there's the next item, the next item, the next item, and so on. And if we went up here and sniffed around a little bit, we could confirm that those are coming out in the order we want them to. The problem is the formatting ain't quite right. Right? They expected this pretty output with just commas in it. Now, I've got all these quotes and hard brackets and stuff like that. But then I remember that somebody was really kind to me and said, hint, if you're having trouble with the format, go back to Google's. And so for the first time ever in my life, I looked up what joining an array in a language is. Joining array in Python. All right, let's try this out. So we have this list, and if I .join the list, it comes out like this. Okay, let's try it out. You can literally borrow this command, copy. How am I doing on time? I'm getting close. All right, and now what I want to do is paste and put this list inside of it. Are we running into... we're running into line wrapping issues here. Have I made this too small now? Nobody's screaming, so I guess that's no. Compile error. We've got an invalid syntax issue. Look at that. There's no closed parentheses for this one. So I try it again. Still no good. List user info is not defined. List user info, what the heck is that? Oh, that's right, because when I copy and pasted this code, it had the word list in it, and I just forgot to delete that. Stupid typos. Hey, look at that. They're now printed line by line with commas. And so what I do is I go find a new command, and then I smash my face into it until it works. And then I go find another new command, and I try it again, and I try it again, and I try it again. And the only thing that's now wrong with this portion of our code is that it doesn't belong here. So what I'm going to do is get rid of these extra prints and grab these and move them to this function. But now I have to call this function, and so I will. And there I've printed all of that. You can see the only thing that's missing is that I didn't print the key that goes with it, but we know how to add two strings together and print them now. And so I'm going to stop here and let us transition to the other languages. But this is the hardest part of this whole code, right? From here, it's go find the single command that adds a user or the single command that deletes a user. Those are the only other two things we need to do. So I'm going to stop there, but are there any questions before I hand this off? Stupendous. Time for Java? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, for your coding pleasure, present to you Daniel Latore. Let's take like 10-ish minutes to show him the nuances of yours. Hand off to both of these pinned on. One's for the web and one's for... They're facing different directions. Yeah, that works. This one, where'd the little fuzzy thing go? That seems cool. I'll put that on later. And let's see.
Do you guys hear me? Yes. Okay, cool. How many? Can you guys hear me? All right. So Java is a little different than Python, as probably most of you guessed, in that it's a lot more complex. You can't just say to print something and it'll print it out. So one of the main things we did here, or I did here, was to find out what our hash table, hash map means. So it's very similar to what we did with Python, is we look at what a hash map is, and we know we have a key and a value. It's detail right here. Gives you a little explanation as to how it works. Basically, it's just a randomized map that stores all the values with keys. And you have a way of looking through the actions right here. So you have like contains keys, you have if compute, you have clone, you have clear. You know, we're going to be using some of these like the get values and the key sets to be able to determine how to do some of these. So while he worked on the printing aspect of it, I'm going to work on the adding using aspect of it. And basically we have an input of two hash maps here. So what we want to go ahead and do is, well, what I did was I set up a new hash map. And let's see here. I'm just going to copy and paste this. Yeah. So the reason why I made this like this is just so that we could just basically unite two hash maps. You could use that. There's an add all command. You could also utilize that. I just went with this because it makes it a lot simpler. If somebody doesn't know how to use all those commands, by creating a new one, you can just add both things to it. Let's see, go back over here. Now, if you take a look at this, basically there's through the list you'll find a put all command, which copies all the mappings from a specific map to this map. So basically you just take the original map and the new user information map and kind of join them together. So that put all basically tells you exactly what to do. So when you go through it, let's see here, you have new map dot put all, and then basically we have user info and new users, so you can enter them in any way you like. And new map dot put all, new user, and then you can just return the joined map together. And that should kind of conclude your adding, because now you just combine two lists together. In here, unlike Python, you can't just put a return 0 because the function is expecting a hash map return. So like if you don't have that, it will just give you errors. So one of the easiest way to see that, let's see if we can do that here. If you try to type return 0, actually you don't even need a return 0 on that one, but I'll put it for purposes of here. You get something, oh, it's, what did I forget? 7 errors, okay. Expected, hash map. Okay, what am I doing here? Oh, great, I use it. Expected. So you can see I had double hash map in there. I don't know how that happened. Maybe a little bit of copy and pasting. All right, as we can see here, there's an error incompatible types. There's supposed to be an, this is an unexpected return value because it's supposed to be integer cannot be returned to converted to hash map. So that's why when you return your answers in these functions, they have to be returned as a hash map. In this one and the delete user function. So I'm just going to go ahead and just leave this one as is, and we'll work on the printing aspect of it. Okay. Let's take a look at the printing aspect of it. So one of the things that hash map tells you here, if you read through it, is that it is sort of an unorganized printed or unsorted printing. So we have to do something very similar to what Python does, in that it has to be sorted. Unfortunately, we can't store it in a hash map because it will remain unsorted. So the easiest way to go with that is if you do a little searching in maps function in Java. Let's see. You'll find that there's all these known implementing classes. If you read through them, they kind of give you a little explanation of each, but I went with tree map. Now the tree map, what it does is basically a tree format, so it basically leaves them in an organized manner. So let's see if I could write that here. Tree map of type integer. Oh. String, and there's a list of sorted entries. Sorted. Oh wait. Right. First, I have to sort this. Of, let's see what command user info. Okay. So that basically translates our hash map into a tree map. The next step after that would be to sort that tree map. So once you sort something and store it back into the tree map, it will stay in that sorted aspect. So the easiest way is to create another for loop, sort of like how we had in Python, except the language is a little different. So one of the neat things about utilizing HackerRank is that if you don't know something, it kind of throws it up there for you. So it gives you like sort of the functions that you need to use. Except we're going to label this to an integer because that's our key, and then a string array. Okay, and then that is for entry. List. Sorted. List of. Oh, sorted that list of. Entry set. Wait, sorted that. Oh. Sorted tree man. Okay, whatever. Let's see, where's this thing? Submap values. Here we go. Sorted map. Let's try to go with that. Reset. Set. Okay. Front line, yes. Now entry list of dot get key. There it is. Well, can't see it, but there it is. So like I said, one of the neat things is that when you put dot something, it kind of gives you something. So you have like a get value, which is an integer. We have a get key, or we have a get class. In this case, we're going to use a get key, as it would outline our key. And then you're going to add an initial comma because there's no like, so when we let's see here, when we have these things, it basically removes the comma for you. So to be able to add the key value with the what's stored in that dictionary, you need to add an extra comma here for purposes of syntax. Okay, let's see. Plus erase. Now this is one of the commands you've seen before. Erase to string. There it is, to string. And we're gonna go ahead and call it list of dot get. There it is. This is string array get value. So we're gonna go ahead and do that. And then there's a neat command call here. Well, here, let me see if I can show you. There's a replace first, replace all, replace, replace. Basically, it's just different forms of replacing. After a little looking at it, you can just hit with the replace function, just to replace itself. And we're going to go ahead and replace the brackets that's initially in the array. And oh, I can't even see that one. Oh, of course. Oh. Okay, let's. Come on. Okay. Yeah, this screen set thing. Oh, there it is. All right. And then we can close that, and then we're gonna do another replace because we have to replace the closing brackets too. And lastly, let's do another replace. You can do as many of these replace as you want for the purpose of your program. We do the comma and space, and then also just the comma by itself in case there are spacing issues there. Okay, one too many brackets. Let's try running that now. Oh wait, we forgot the main function. We got to call that. If option. Wait, let's see. If option dot equals neat little add user. So basically in the main function, we're going to create an if option that equals to add user, which is one of our string commands that comes in. You can call tree. Oh, hold on, add user. Oh, great. This is going to take a little longer than I have time for, but basically you once you have the if option equals to add user, you just basically call it and send the information from that if option up here to our static hash map head user. Can you call it without the if? Unfortunately, I mean, you could call it without the if. The thing is that you just want it to function for a specific string input. Call add user. If you don't add that if, else if, or else statement, it will call it for you, but it won't call it based on a specific action by the user. So you need to kind of kind of display that with the what the user input is. So add user, delete user, and display user. So you can make an if, else if, and else statement here, and then that will help you run through these depending on the input. And that's all I have time for. But if you guys have any other questions, you guys can always come to our office hours and ask us.
Thanks, Brad. All right, and we're going to do 5 more quick minutes here to show you one of the nuances of Swift. I give you Took. We need some mics on you.
Hi. Wait,
we need both of them.
Both of them?
Yeah.
Just gotta be real quick.
Click over to Swift here.
Yeah. Alright. Hi. Alright.
Thanks, bud.
So we're gonna do it in Swift. So
Talk nice and loud, okay?
So this is like the main function, so it's return void. So now you gotta make sure that all of these little functions up here return void as well. But you see the top 2 functions right here do not return void, so we gotta make it void like for the first top 2. So this is gonna be like the you're gonna put in like all the options. What? Oh, turn it up. Way up? Yeah, I'll do that. All right, so you know what? Screw this thing. I'll just talk. So first, you gotta make sure that the option is equal to add user. So you're gonna do that, and then you gotta return the add user function, which is gonna be this. Copy and paste that. Well, screw it. Add user. So that's like the parameter, and then you gotta put in the argument for the functions. It expected 2, so you gotta put that, and then new user. Same thing. Just copy and paste that. And you go do that. What is this called? Displace users. All right. Let's go. All nice and done. And so what you really realize about this is that these are just like constant. You gotta make them mutable. So this is how you gotta make them mutable. Oh no. Equal user info, and then mutable dot merge. That's how you merge the two dictionary together. New user.
Wrap it up on Wednesday. Okay?
Oh, you want to do it on Wednesday?
Yeah, we'll do it on Wednesday.
All right, yeah, I guess I'll just do it on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I don't have time.
All right, hey everybody, thank you. Sorry that we took a little long on the first couple. We'll do Swift on Wednesday, and then we'll get you set up for the code sprint. Have a good one.